So one of the topics we are tackling in this forum, as mentioned by Mrs. Moratti in her inaugural speech, is the role of finance, what markets can do to guide and support companies' investments. We shall hear from bankers, insurances, large managers, one of the biggest asset management company in the world. But I'd start from the video that was sent to the president of the Italian Stock Exchange, because the stock exchange is another aspect that may simplify and ease transition. So if you are listed on the stock exchange and you do something good for the environment in a sustainable way, you should be rewarded. In some cases, non-compliant companies are not even considered when it comes to listing. So I would like to listen to Mrs. Claudia Parzani, President of the Italian Stock Exchange, and I would like to ask for the video to be played. Good morning. Thank you very much for your introduction. I hope you can forgive me for not being there with you. Good morning, everybody, and once again, thank you for your kind invitation and congratulations to Confindustria, to the community of San Patrignano for this forum, which has become an unmissable appointment, as well as a very important point of reference for topics that are very dear to my heart. Today, my topic is to share with you some elements, some pointers concerning the topics of the day. I have listed 5 such topics, but I would like to start from an assumption. The assumption is that the complexity we have to deal with is unique. It is something we are unaccustomed to. We have spoken for a long time about multi-crisis. Now we're speaking about a permanent crisis, because there are many crises and they are with us for a long time. But the question today is how to go about it, what to do about it. And I think the key is to tackle the paradigm. How can we change the paradigm in order to be sure that we can tackle the current situation in the best possible way? Also, grasping its opportunities and making sure we are working on innovation, on social innovation, on product and process innovation. And it's the new way for us to do business and to consider businesses. Of the first element that I would like to mention, there's 5 of them, very, very briefly, but the first one is economic success vis-à-vis social success, or rather social progress. Well, I think we have to consider how we measure our success and what successes are relevant and what are less so. So I think that economic success, which guides the business activity and guides entrepreneurs and also measures this degree of success of our companies, is only one of the possible parameters. Less business-like term is happiness. So, for example, the ability to generate well-being, to generate culture, to become attractive for businesses is an increasingly relevant parameter. And it is so because this leads me to the second element of my presentation here today, is purpose. Some people call it raison d'être. Well, it's the noble reason why we exist. Whatever you call it, it's a matter of knowing what we do and being able to create a sense of belonging. That means that anybody within the same company, when they open the door, when they go through the door, they know why they're there and what role they are supposed to play in the whole. So this sense of belonging, this motivation, the sense of pride that emerges is what moves people, what gives them a sense of purpose, a common sense of direction. And this is one of the most important things for me today. So every time I go to university, students ask me about that. They look for it, they measure it, they want to know what the role is going to be. It is no longer a destination in your professional life. It's at the point of access. And then how does it grow, my desire to contribute? How does that business contribute to the social context? How does it interact with the social context? So in my opinion, this is one of the most relevant elements. So we have to stop and ask ourselves, let's use this context of difficulty to ask ourselves the question, to make sure we have the right answers, because the answers will guide us and will also tell us about the vision, an in-depth and wide vision. So we're no longer speaking about survival, but long-term perspective with an in-depth social impact. So social economic success, social progress, purpose. And the third element I wanted to touch upon with you today is the value of governance. This is my job as an expert in governance. I'm never tired of explaining that it doesn't matter how big or small your company is, it doesn't matter what structure it has or what sector it operates in. Giving yourself the time to assess your governance and working towards achieving the best possible governance is actually a way to generate value, because first, the three ESG letters, the third G stands for governance, and what matters is it is an input. It informs the way you work on the other two, on environmental impact and on human capital. So governance is the way in which we wear our best dress. That's what I explain to startups. And I always tell them there is always a way to present things that is more sophisticated, or quite simply, if I may, smarter, more intelligent, calling things in a more structured way. So a startup has a group of directors who are very often friends. Well, let's set up an advisory board. For more structured companies, my suggestion is integrate young people. You cannot integrate them in the generation takeover. Well, create a mirror board, i.e. create a board that can mirror on the pillars of strategy the same discussions that occur in the main board. These are only some examples of innovation that may happen in terms of governance on a small or bigger scale. But governance is also the way in which communication is managed. So there's, on the one hand, a desire to impact by the company, and then structured governance that gives a direction, a sense of how to steer the ship towards the destination. And then there's a fourth element, which is fourth only by chance, because it's probably the most important, i.e. attention and care towards human capital. Well, we can speak a lot about technology innovation. We can speak about artificial intelligence. We can speak about many different things, but we have at the same time discovered the value of human capital. And today, human capital is possibly the most central of topics in every business's discussions. First of all, the topic of talent is absolutely crucial. What do our young people study? Where do they work? Are they choosing our companies? Are they choosing to stay within our companies? So the ability to attract and retain talent is crucial. But the skilling and reskilling topics are also very, very important. So how do we create that sense of purpose, that sense of belonging? We can do this by focusing on people, focusing on well-being. Before I used a word I would like to mention again, and that was happiness. Have we ever wondered how much unhappiness costs in our businesses? For us, it's very easy to measure happiness, what it gives us. Suffice it to think about what we can contribute contribute when we are happy, when working in our company. We can contribute openness, willingness to work as a part of a team. So the possibility of doing things which have a value also in terms of productivity, in terms of profitability, but also in terms of well-being which the company may create. So human capital and then persons should be at the center of it all. And this leads me to the last element I would like to mention today, which probably affects all of you and all of us. And that is what type of persons are we? What type of leaders are we? Well, we may have different responsibilities, micro or macro, but we definitely have to ask ourselves what we are doing in terms of responsibility, whether we are working on the paradigm that may help us change some habits that need changing. We are speaking about new models, new contexts. Speaking about leaders and speaking about leadership, I would like to mention some pointers that are fundamental for me today. First of all, listening ability. This listening ability, going back to human capital, in my opinion, is also connected to the topic of generations. We should really pay heed to younger generations. And for younger generations, it's important that they listen to their elders. Leaders have to make an impact, but this calls for respect between generations, coexistence between generations, which is particularly complicated today because we are no longer measuring experience in a linear way. It's a totally different context. Suffice it to think about the experience young people can give to an ESG or digital context. And we have always thought that experience and ability come only with a certain number of years of experience. So this leads us again to this listening skill and of suspension of judgment, if you allow me. Very often I hear people my age saying young people are not ambitious anymore, they don't want to do this or that. So I think we have to give up judgment and try to understand why. Speaking about myself, one thing I have learned is that young people have a very strong sense of responsibility and of respect of the common good, of the value of personal time for themselves, which is much higher, much bigger than what I had when I was their age. So that's something that I can learn from them. So listening abilities is important to better integrate different generations and allow them to coexist. So we need vision, strategy, but we also need a great ability to be vulnerable, to be real, to be true, to be sincere. This is what we expect from our leaders, people who support us. And how do we expect this to happen? Well, in the most sincere, most real of ways, because it is time to have people around us who can also share their failures. My current struggle is to overcome this pattern wherefore we're always successful. Let's say we're all sports people. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. And we know that trying is a value in and of itself. And if we understand that, we also understand that innovating is easier because we can test, we can experiment. We find it easier to be humble, to overcome our limits because we know we cannot always win. And then acknowledge that there are people who are better than you, who you can choose to be part of your team. So these are the features which lead me to think about the people who should lead 1, 2, 100 other people, because I think that's how we can find the direction together. And with this togetherness. I would like to conclude my short intervention reminding ourselves that we cannot do much unless we can connect it to what others are doing as well. More than ever, we need to realize that we are only one element of the scene, that the scene, the stage, is full of many co-protagonists, and that if we work together well, if we have a very high sense of responsibility, and if we humbly understand what our role and what our importance is in embracing everything else, well, then we can make the difference. And that's what I wish you all today. I wish you that you have a fruitful, enriching, generous discussion, and then all together, like Confindustria and San Patrignano know how to do together, together we can all make a difference. Thank you. Thank you, Claudia Parzani, President of the Italian Stock Exchange. As you heard, entrepreneurs and managers, directors or CEOs have to consider a number of elements. The role is more difficult. It's not sufficient to produce a product and sell it. Now you have to make sure that your company is sustainable from the environmental, from the social point of view. So you have to consider different elements. You have to highlight your human capital. Human capital has become rarer to come by. I hear companies saying we are no longer selecting the young people. It's the young people who have to select us. So we have to make ourselves attractive so that we can attract talent.